right. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Great to have you here as you're tuning in, whether it's good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. We're very excited to have you. My name is Madeline Corneli, and I'm your MC in initialisms as well as role today. But I'm very excited to hand it over to my friend and collaborator on many occasions, Ashley Sutaria. He's going to give an incredible presentation today. He recently joined us at Exasol Customer Conference Experience and talked deeply about what it takes to build the AI ecosystems of tomorrow. And Ashley has done a ton of work leading teams and really being innovative when it comes to implementing AI, building solutions with AI, and thinking about the broader picture of how we as organizations and leaders in the data and analytics space evolve with AI. I think this session is really going to challenge all of us to think about what our role is and sort of the direction that we are all taking as a collective as we move towards what this AI future looks like. So Ashley, I'm incredibly excited to have you here. I'm going to hand it over to you to give a little bit of an additional introduction and then kick it off and tell us your story and bring us on this journey with you.
Wow, no, thank you so much, Madeline. Always a pleasure being with the group. They are also passionate about data and AI and then the future of our next generation. So very excited to have here. My name is Ashay Sutaria. I manage the AI data products for the large organization here. It's quite a journey. And I wanted to share that experience with you because I believe we are all in this together, right? Because when we started back in 2020 and 2022, I believe, those are the ones where we are very fascinated about this black box where we were like, hey, if I put in more data, if I put in more electricity, if I put in more energy, it's gonna generate the output. It's gonna create the solution to solve the world hunger, per se. But the hard truth and the confession is this kind of a God's model is really failed us. But they also helped us to understand how complex our real world example is, right? Situations are. And what I mean by that is if we can have model that can pass the bar exam, but it cannot seamlessly integrate into your privacy laws, right? We in the healthcare industry, we have models who can predict various cancers and things like that, but really cannot process the vendor invoices seamlessly. Or we have the ecosystem where they can generate the grid intensity, but it fails when there is a natural disaster happens, right? So I think it's not about the AI's IQ, right? The bottleneck is more about AI's integration, right? And then that's where I think we have to wake up and understand our role is being the architect, right? Our role is being, understanding our future is not built into data centers. Our future is built in the spaces between the machines. It's the ecosystem of tomorrow. And it's really a time that we start building it for real. And that's where we are all here. We're gonna deep dive into building the AI ecosystem of tomorrow. And then beyond is really not the luxury, is that's where we all come in together as the architect of tomorrow. So let me share my screen. Again, as I said, my name is Ashay Sutaria. Let's build a future for tomorrow. All right, awesome. So so as an example, when we say AI ecosystem of tomorrow, let me go back to a reality check, right? When Madeline, let's say, had 15 hours flight from US to Europe, and then she dropped by at the Berlin airport, let's say, and then she's like, oh my God, I'm hungry. Let me go to any of my black box called LLM here. Again, I'm not trying to pick it up anyone, but here, and say, I'm in the mood for some food, and she starts searching and she explains the model and then prompt it properly, making sure that they understand her choices, preferences, dietary restrictions, and some of the other ones, and then the model comes back with the options and she can pick one. Rather, that's the model or era that we are in. We need to pivot our mindset from there to, how about the scenario where Marilyn just dropped in at the Berlin airport after a long flight, and somebody's AI or her personal assistant talks over the phone and say, hey, it's been a 9 hours, and you know what, based on your past history, I think looks like you are in the mood for sushi. There is a two great restaurants on the way to the hotel, and I can order the Uber. It's about two minutes out. And guess what? You are running low on your pain medication. We can take a U-turn. It's gonna take a 2 minute extra. Can I start now? So look at the difference in the experience between those two, and that is what it's meant when we say world beyond the prompt, where we have the edge computing happening within the devices itself, when into the connected ecosystem. So let's dive into it. But how do we build this, right? Um, as we mentioned, we have mastered the spark, meaning our isolated intelligence, but we really lack the integrated autonomy. And when we say integrated autonomy, it's more about not having the ecosystem built in to support the AI's IQ and AI's integration, right? So and then the obsession, of course, we still have it, but we are still fixated on our LLM benchmarking, where reasoning capabilities and context windows are still about, hey, how fast we can process this, how broader we can process this, right? But really, so we have built that functioning systems, but we forgot how do we connect that into a solution, right? That is the missing piece. The missing piece is what happens to the sensory input, if we talk about in terms of a brain, what happens to a motor function, what happens to a nerve responses. So all of those are really required for us to create the intelligent solution, not only a disconnected brain. Blueprint of looking into this connected ecosystem, we have to talk about the three main pillars of our distributed network. One is, of course, data trust. Second is the edge computing that we're going to talk in detail, and third is the governance in action with the human in check. So trust foundation, everything start with the trust here, and ecosystem. We have seen it time and time that just collapses without having the data trust. Because if your data is not ethical or your data is not governed, it just the output would be a worse habit of what you are requesting. So integration is very key. The trusted integration is very key, rather than looking into what volume of information that we are feeding into the AI ecosystem. Second one is, we talked about the distributed intelligence. This is where we believe that AI shouldn't live in the giant distant cloud. It needs to live in at the time where the data is being generated and processed at the source of originations. Meaning that it could be live in your pocket, in your car, in your kitchen, or any of these smaller devices. Right, and then the third one is the human remains the captain, right? So AI should augment our intuition, not replace it. We still remain the captain, meaning the human in the loop. It's real thing. It's not just the safety check, right? Now, why is it so difficult for many organizations We have to start from the bottom, where we need to really understand what are my friction points look like, right? Is it the old legacy infrastructure that just not able to handle the new interfaces or APIs that needed to streamline the information? Or is it the technology monopolies that every big or small organization have it that just locks the data away into their own silos, and having the access to data is just a privilege? Or is could be, and this is time to time people come and ask me this question, that deep-seated fear that we all have, that oh my god, what's going to happen to my job? Is it the job displacement and loss of control, right? um, all of these three factors somehow excuse me, somehow plays a role into going to a next maturity level. So so reality is we really have to start building this ecosystem by untangling these pieces one at a time, not just simply cutting them and say let's just start from scratch, right? And then the way we implement it and think that really speeds up the end-to-end journey is understanding this is just not a simple way of deploying another software into our ecosystem, right? We are really building the infrastructure, right? We are really building the future that we all rely upon. We usually divide them into four phases. And phase one, obviously, it's more about the foundation and governance, really understanding the bedrock, right? And when I say a bedrock, is main about understanding what's your data look like, and then how do you curate it, how do you make it available. Your phase two is your infrastructure and integrations. How do you flow it through various ecosystems? Phase three is, of course, how do you have your human resources align and help you to get to an endpoint? And phase four is more about how do we sustain it? How do we scale it with the environment in check? All right. You cannot create interoperability, right, without having your interoperability standards. Meaning that if your barrier is the data that is siloed and locked into some digital fortresses, it's not going to help, right? Every company have their own proprietary formats, and then from privacy laws and etc. But we really need to understand how do we make it open protocol that kind of allows this data intelligence to flow freely between either your hybrid system or your edge system or to your end users, right? So really, to achieve the grid, the mandate here is to have a different system must speak with each other using the same language, right? And then how do we do that? Really have to have a shift from our static data lakes to live data streams, right? This is where we established when we talked about the legal and logical bedrocks. This is what we are saying, where our data must flow where it's needed instantly, right? If it's coming after 15 minutes, if it's coming after a day, if it's coming after a week, really doesn't help, right? So this is where we require those data circulatory systems, not just the standalone data lakes. I know everybody is afraid of the word governance, but really the governance should be treated as guardrails that basically allows our ecosystem to move faster, not just the hindrance in between. And then in within the governance, we divide them into three factors of zero trust architecture, ethical AI, and then the guardrail model. And we can go deeper into it, but I think the words are sufficient enough to understand that every data request that your agent, your API, or your another endpoint are requesting must be authenticated and then thoroughly checked. Zero trust architecture. um, Ethical AI frameworks where we really understand that to speed up the governance and compliance, we wanted to embed them directly into our data flow pipelines, not just because somebody said, "Hey, this doesn't work or this doesn't look good." We go retroactively go and check it out. It should really embed it directly into your data pipelines. And then the third one, we really need to have the orchestration layer or kind of a supervisory model or agent that sits on top of your worker agent or primary LLMs to monitor the outputs, the intent, the suggestions, recommendations in real time. So in case something goes back, the guardrails are already there to correct the course of action. Um, Again, the intelligence has to move to edge computing or the distributed cloud. This is where we go with the mindset of process the data where it's born, right? And then why do we do that? We wanted to reduce the latency for real-time decisions, of course, right? If you're driving the car, somebody's coming in front of you, you wanted to send the data out to a third-party cloud, and then somebody takes decisions based on the algorithm, sends the output back to you guys. By the time, I'm sure you're gonna hit somebody. It's not enough time for that. So reduce latency for the real-time decisions. It's really key for us to move to edge computing. At the same time, we all know how expensive these models are to train them and to run them with the real information. So this really lowers the energy cost because of the less data transmission scenarios, and we have to connect the intelligence to physical world, right? That's where the real use cases come live, and that's where it has a tendency to change people lifestyle. Very, very important that we felt here is you have to have a reliability test checked before any of the production deployment. And what do I mean by that? And then that's why I love this picture here is before any of your AI application manages the your customer base or your financial modeling or kind of marketing branding, etc. It has to prove at least a 10,000 simulation hours. So we go through a lot of simulations and then artificial data testing scenario checks just to make sure that if something goes outside the box, we have already tested those scenarios during the simulations. And then also universal API is also key. That's where the outside world scenarios will come up to a picture where the medical team can talk to logistics team or the external stakeholder can talk to internal stakeholder seamlessly without having any interruptions, right? So that's the universal API absolute must there, and then the most important thing is how do we align our workforce, right? How do we upskill our workforce to understand really their role that is being evolving from prompters to system overseers, right? How do we do that? We have to create the action plan to making sure that they are just not somebody to check or test certain things. They are really there to understand the AI's cognitive load output and then handle the contextual decision that only human can make it, right? And then the goal here is to solve the trust gap because we want human to be a captain. We want human to still use AI or use model to do all the cognitive load and the execution, but the contextual decision and oversight is still depending on the system overseers, which is your workforce. So train them, use them. It's just this mind shift. It's just a role shifting to use a next ecosystem. And then how do we measure the accuracy of that, right? Of course, everybody loves dashboard, right? And then dashboard usually, gives you, why certain thing happen. And then having what happened and how it happened, it's not kind of a luxury, right? Every key concept has to have a built-in explain functions so that we understand that, hey, how this decision has been made. And then autonomy brings the trust so that we can understand, oh, this is great, right? So as an example here, you can see we have selected a certain route. We need to have the reason. We need to have a confidence score so we know why certain decision cognitively AI model has made it. Phase four, very, very important. And this is where I think we all have to come together, really, really come together to understand and mandate the carbon aware scheduling. mm, can't just keep building the AI models and train them if you don't have a green compute initiative baked in it, right? Meaning, how do we create what we call as intelligence corridor? Excuse me. Between it could be between the two countries, it could be between two of your hubs, it could be between two of your stakeholders or two of your technical systems, right? How do we create those intelligence corridors to share compute resources securely and efficiently? Because this is where it ensures that all of our AI ecosystem is resilient, is scalable, it is collaborative, it is progressive, and then making sure that we're not compromising into security as well as the national interest. So that is what kind of a four phases that you have to think about it when you talk about AI ecosystem. And then of course, just wanted to give the architect's mandate, right? Wanted to reinforce on, you know, success of the model should not measure by the system uptime or just the connectivity, right? Um, it's the way of massaging your information and bringing the insight in the real time. The governance is also, it's part of the infrastructure. It's just not a checkbox where you say, "Oh my God, it's gonna help me." It's not gonna help me. It's gonna take much time. Has to have a part of a infrastructure, and then of course, human is the architect. That's where we are trying to move our workforce from being the prompter operator to the orchestrators. So, what is the vision? All of this is for what? What is the vision, right? So, imagine an ecosystem where your AI is managing your city, your traffics, your energy grids in a real time, right? To prevent the outages, if it's the hurricane comes or if it's some of the other natural disasters, all of that is seamlessly managed by your AI ecosystem. But you also have small AI assistant that is helping your colleague or yourself to draft a poem when you are sitting on the bench, right? So the experience has to have the technology that is baked in seamlessly. It is invisible, it is absolutely helpful, and it is absolutely future driven, right? It is no longer just a tool that you open on your phone or your computer and then you kind of interact with it. It is having the uniqueness utilities without friction to any of your worlds. Um, Some of these features of strategic shift that we can talk about it maybe next time, but I got a couple question on this, so I added the slide here. This just kind of shows you how the industry is moving from the model era to ecosystem era, and then I can share this information after the webinar here. Um, Last call out here again. We talked about it. It is our duty. We are the architect, right? We are not just the passive observers of the future. Every integration choice we make today is a brick in the foundation for tomorrow's ecosystem. So you have to design with intent, just not the consumption in mind, right? And then in the other way I like to say it is the algorithm is what and the ecosystem is why. And then when we bridge them together, that's where the future comes into place, right? I'm gonna. I'm a huge fan of a notebook LM, so I thought I'll give you guys with the one pager where it shows you what we talked about, what are the strategic shift look like, and the four phases of the roadmap. I'm open to any questions if you have, and then we'll have some of the online questions also. Thank you. Madeline, back to you.
Thank you, Ashley. That's fantastic. And folks that are dialing in, if you want to send some questions to the chat, feel free. One of the questions that we often have that I like to talk to Ashley about is one of the projects that he's most excited about that you're working on right now that's AI driven. Like that's always a good way to kick it off in the context of the presentation that you just shared with us.
Yeah, I think one of the use cases we had is where can't tell the name, but the one of the retail giant came to us and is like, you know what? How do I beat the competition? It's just a simple question, you know. I mean, I have the products, my competitor has the product. How do we use AI to beat the competitions, right? And that's where we looked into. We talked about your data has to flow to talk to various USB of AIs, right? That's where we looked into what's the weather information look like, what's their logistics and the inventory levels look like. We looked into their entire supply chain ecosystems, and then we create this orchestration model that basically looks at the weather information for the area and the zip code. And then if weather starts getting warmer, it looks at a very specific inventory of the items, changes the prices dynamically. And then approvers happens over time because all the approvals checks and balance is a part of the governance model, and then updates with certain promos and the promotions to that area's customer. So by doing so, not only we beat the competitions because before they can make those adjustments, we are already there and help the net gain by 14%, not just doing something extra, but just helping the data to take certain decision with AI into real world. So something simple, but really we are looking into use cases where how we can have some edge where we can beat the competition, smaller margin, smaller footprints, but at the end it's a really great impact.
That's awesome. I love hearing about that. And I think, it goes from abstract to, and what's the concrete thing that we're building and solution that we're creating. Another question that is kind of inspired by your presentation as well is, you talk a lot about kind of the role that we all have as kind of stewards as we move into the AI future and kind of creating that future. And you're a leader in your space and in the AI and analytics world. How do you kind of bring your people and your team along? Because there's a lot of change management I think we've all been kind of feeling this and hearing about this as the world seems to change every day with AI. And you're really leading the charge here, and you're talking about kind of this shared ownership that we all have. So you as a leader, kind of how do you think about that and really having that be like a team effort?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think a lot of leaders, if you talk about them, about 50% or more executive expect some kind of displacement, right? And then 2026 data also shows that, it's not backing up actually. It's AI related roles are actually outpacing the confirmed losses, meaning that, if you the real risk is not the replacement, or it's just a trust gap. And then when you show that to your people and guide them and then train them and saying that, hey, this is how it's not the optional to learn AI anymore, right? It is mandatory. It's just that how do you train them, coach them, guide them using their core skill that they already have it, but now they are looking at the bigger picture. They are looking at really understanding the entire ecosystem and how they can impact the bottom line. So the satisfaction factors on a lot of job role gonna be increased. As an example, we are many of us become data engineer by choices, and every time we work on our role, it's more about creating a pipeline, or understanding the mapping, and moving the data from one source to another destination. We never had the opportunity where we can go and talk to business or executives and say, hey, this is the task or steps that I did and I owned it, and this is how it's going to impact your business to take the real actionable decisions, right? So really shifting that mindset, and then providing a tools, training, and material to support that mindset shift. It's kind of a key, and it's not going to be easy. It's going to be a journey, but I think at the end results is amazing. So just guide them, help them. It's about making sure the trust gap is kind of solved.
Trust gap. Yeah, I like that way of thinking about it. Very encouraging to hear from a leader that sentiment. Another question that came from our audience today is, how do you see the AI ecosystem coming together in relation to all of these different AI companies? Do you think there's going to be a large scale consolidation? And as we think about, do we have more companies, fewer companies? And then on a more technical side, will there be like AI created and maintained integrations? How do all of these different components work together? Will we see like an evolution of APIs, an API v2 that's all designed for AIs? What does kind of the playing field start to look like with AI? What do you think?
Very, very interesting question. I think it's all gonna settle down to a place where it's driven by experience. I think it's right now there are not a lot of nerves in the technical field, also into market and into users, where, oh my God, what's gonna happen here? How do we use this? What's the future look like? Etc. But it's about understanding that every tool technology have their pros and cons, and then plugging those pros to your usage and understanding those cons so that you kind of avoid it. So take the skills that you needed to streamline and scale your operation at the speed of light, how I would like to think it. And then whether if it's one company is helping you to drive that ecosystem, or four or five, it just depends on how much scaling factor that you have into your business, right? So coming back to the point, whether it's the top Fortune companies in the world or in the US or in China, right? Everybody is pouring the amount of information to get the edge into a market. It's all about the adoption and scalability from the end user perspective. It's all going to scale down to a factor where you always have a niche into your area, but how those niche are connected and scalable together. So,
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And I guess what I've noticed is kind of this niche concept is really interesting. And I was having a conversation just the other day about how it's kind of less so platforms that are distinguishing each other, and more so kind of ideas and concepts pulled from lots of different places. So you might have like a solution over here that does this really cool thing with AI, and you might have a solution over here that does this really cool thing. And people are commenting kind of on these feature level elements, and so that resonates. I think the idea of like find these niches where a problem can be solved, something can be improved, and it requires a lot of creativity, right? Instead of kind of building this one tool for everything. So that's an interesting kind of, I agree with that, and I like your assessment of where we're headed. I guess let's close with one final question here. And I think, Ashay, like you're a busy guy. So how do you stay sharp? How do you stay kind of on top of what's happening in AI and in the AI and data world? And I think for a lot of the kind of practitioners and leaders on this session, they probably have a similar question, which is, and I know I do, right? What do you do to kind of stay on top of things and keep learning in
oh my
a
God,
fast-paced environment?
this question's very near dear to my heart because that's how I jump into this entire AI ecosystem. If you believe it or not, I had the same issue. So I started. So I have long story short, I have my own AI agent that when I wake up in the morning gives me each topic in a five area of my interest and say what's happening into the AI world, and then creates based on that. So my thing is 5 minutes to understand what's happening where, 5 minutes to understand, do I even know in a simple terms what does that mean? I don't need to be expert. You cannot be expert to every single thing that comes out when you wake up, right? Obviously, that's how the market feels like today. But at least I want to know what's happening in the 5 minutes. Next 5 minutes, I want to know, do I really understand or know the basic understanding of why that is happening? And then kind of go from there. And then it kind of, if it interests you, then you can deep dive into, again, use your AI, use Claude, use Gemini. Don't be afraid of it. Again, you can use it in your phone while you are driving. There are a lot of podcasts out there, but I think the reading materials is great. Having a knowledge or understanding of what's happening where and certain terms. And I have this AI periodic table which I would like to share sometime next to next when we meet. But it's the idea of until you build something yourself, until you dive into it and really understand and experience the greatness that AI brings in to make your life easier. So that if I save 20 minutes of my day using certain AI application, I can reinvest that 20 minutes into sharpening my skill for the future. So kind of, everybody has the same hours during the day. How do I use AI to free up my time, and then I can rescale those time to understand the new AI concept. So build the AI agent for you. Use the Claude or any of the model that you find interesting, and then play with it. It's fine. It's not harmless. It is harmless. Excuse me. But no, I mean, reuse some of your productivities to sharpen your skill.
I love that. And we had a curious listener ask, what is your AI of choice for the five things? Do you have a preferred platform that you use, or do you kind of switch between them all?
Uh, I was naive enough to understand one of them can solve everything, but then after I long research, it depends on what you're doing, right? If I want to code something, I would go and talk to Claude. If I want to research understanding or topic about it, I think a Gemini and Perplexity does really well. So, and then if I want to create something smaller, video or something like that, I like Nano Bananas and kind of that. So it's really, it's really based on what you're looking for. I don't believe the one fits all model works here. So it just, but again, that's what I was emphasizing on. Get out there, use them, so you know which one helps you more in what scenarios and the use cases.
Fantastic. Get out there and use them. I love it. I think that's a
Absolutely.
great place to leave it for today. So Ashley, thank you so much. Thanks for your wise words and inspiring us to keep pushing
Absolutely.
forward and think about this in bigger, novel ways. So for folks that are joining, we have, of course, more webinars coming, so exciting opportunities to learn more. We have what's new in Exasol coming up in May. And then also, how can you optimize your Exasol instance, faster queries and lower costs? So if you're interested, please tune in. And thanks for joining us all today. And Ashley, thank you so much
Thank you.
for leading us through this.
Absolutely. Thank you. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop a note in LinkedIn, or reach out to Madeline here, and I'll try my best. Thank you.